Producer Joe here from the Working Fans Podcast. And at the Working Fans Podcast, this is just a podcast that three lifelong fans created to have a place to talk comedy and pro wrestling. Now, our comedy podcast releases every Tuesday, while our wrestling podcast releases every Thursday. We release bonus episodes under the moniker Working Fans Presents every now and then. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, any major podcast provider. The important thing is just please like, rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to us. Now, we have started a new thing. We are now on Amazon and Audible. So those episodes release every Monday. And that's kind of going through the archives and just releasing our old episodes into new areas. So if you want to live through the process with us again, take that journey with us again, you can find us over on Amazon and Audible. Now, if you can't get enough of us in the audio form, check out our YouTube. It's youtube.com/C/Working Fans Wrestling Pod, or just search Working Fans Podcast on YouTube. We have the whole archive is up there. And if you listen to the Working Fans Podcast, you are more than familiar with the 531. That is our signature segment where we take your top 5 list on a particular subject, vote it down to a top 3, and then debate it down to a top 1. Now, guys, if you want to hear 3 guys talk shit about comedy, wrestling, life, anything, you will enjoy the Working Fans Podcast. Welcome back for another week of the Working Fans Podcast. I'm here, Dave's here. AJ is apparently still lost in the islands, but
he's out there
doing enough, cracking people over the head with coconuts.
Yeah, he's having fun, man.
And speaking of AJ, this week we are talking the 531, the most polarizing people in wrestling. And before we start this, I'm going to start with a couple of definitions because in hindsight, we probably should have did this when we put out the list. Now, dictionary.com has polarizing as tending to divide people into sharply opposing factions. The Cambridge Dictionary has it as to cause something, especially something that contains different people or opinions, to divide into 2 completely opposing groups. And polarizing figures or people in wrestling, that's not an uncommon thing. Would you say, Dave?
Nope, not at all. I think you just segued pretty good talking about our boy AJ. AJ, if you're hearing this, you know, he's a bit polarizing. Some people love him, some people hate him. And yeah, that's not very uncommon. And hey, truth be told, some of the most interesting people are usually polarizing.
I would say it's almost important in wrestling when you want to get cheered by some people, booed by others. And wow, I didn't even put that together till right now. You would have thought it would have come up as we were putting this together, but I think we like to fly by the seat of our pants lately.
Yeah, I mean, the worst thing you can want in the wrestling business, they always say, is silence. Or as a performer, you know, you want that emotional reaction one way or the other. So if they're reacting, you're doing something right.
Yes, sir. Now, the first list I got from Tracy Warobe of the Mothership Group on Facebook.
Tracy.
They have Paul Heyman, Hulk Hogan, Sadly Cornette. You got to remember, this is the Mothership Group. That's the Brian Last and Jim Cornette family podcast. Bruce Pritchard and Bill Watts. I mean, Sadly Cornette, I can see that's definitely coming from like a huge Cornette fan. But I mean, I think it's obvious that Cornette's polarizing. Just listen to him talk. he can't talk without a certain amount of people hating every word he says. Yet there's another group that loves it
I think Cornette's
so much.
definitely polarizing. You have to include him on the list because he's like the epitome of it. There are so many people that are loyal to Cornette and love him, and there's so many people who think he's the worst thing ever. So you know what's interesting on that list? My list that I have come on, I don't think I've seen Bill Watts, and I thought that was a pretty good one that he mentioned there too, because Bill Watts is definitely considered a legend in terms of booking and the Mid-South territory, one of the greats. But obviously, he was known to be a bit of a hard ass, and he also had some not too nice. He had some racist comments. They got him fired from WCW. So I mean, he's somebody that would be on that list for sure. In fact, I would say, I don't know if he's going to be on our list. I didn't put him down today too. A guy I'm a big fan of, Jim Ross. I don't think was polarizing up until maybe the last maybe 5 years, maybe since New Japan a little bit, that run. But I would say he's polarizing now too.
Yeah, he's definitely turned the corner, and that's a little surprising because Jim Ross has always been like that standard bearer of wrestling, the one that like almost nobody has a bad word to say about, unless of course you're an ex-wife. But
I think that makes him polarizing, and maybe just the same thing with some of these people. They don't give a fuck to a certain extent. Like, it's not that they won't say they're wrong or apologize, but if they think they're right or whatever, they're not going to be. They're the kind of people. Jim Cornette's the same way too. They're going to tell you what they think is right, and they're going to stand by it. And some people don't want to deal. That's going to drive some people the wrong way if we think you're wrong. Some people are like, well, I want to. Whose fault is it, Joe? We need to know, right? And that's the thing. A guy like Jim Ross, Jim Cornette. No, I don't think I'm wrong. Or if they do, sometimes I think they will apologize, but sometimes they're like, go fuck yourself.
Jim Cornette still hasn't backed down on that joke that took him off NWA, and some would view that as a bold position, and some would view it as Jim stating his position, standing up for what he believes in. And like we always say, sometimes the best villain believes they're doing the right thing, even though it goes opposed to your hero.
My list first. I'm going to kick it off with my list. All right. I put down Eric Bischoff, one. Very polarizing to me, especially. When I was younger, I hated Eric Bischoff. I thought he was just a piece of shit. And now I love the guy, I was a mark, I was into it. I bought into it. Goldberg, hated Goldberg. I know some people loved Goldberg back in the day, especially Goldberg was so popular, but now I'd say it's definitely more, I don't know if I'd go 50-50, but he's definitely got an audience that does not like Bill right now. They do not want him around. Vince McMahon, God, I mean, come on. How many people will like, Vince McMahon is the worst thing ever in professional wrestling. At the same time, you have his fans and like, we owe this all to him. And maybe some are both true, But I think you got to have Vince on that list. Jim Cornette, I said it before, guy's a definition of polarizing. He's a lightning rod for heat. At the same time, he is beloved by his Cornette following. And last, I got to put down Hulk Hogan. You talk about a guy that was so popular, maybe the most popular man ever in wrestling at one point. And now, he's still got his fans, but he's definitely got people that know who he is and know some of the things he said. And then of course, even behind the scenes, not even counting the racist stuff, some of the stuff he said, this we found out over the years, political, that, like that incident with, and I don't think the guy holds a grudge against him, but Undertaker, when Undertaker talked about when Hogan tried to claim that, he stiffed him on that pile driver and injured his neck. And you could clearly see Hogan's head never came close with a power driver on the chair. So it's like, stuff like that. You can see why Hogan definitely had his detractors, but he still got his fans too.
How about what he did to Jesse Ventura when Jesse was trying to talk the guys into a union and Hogan was the one that alerted Vince to it?
No shit. I definitely, I agree. But also, like, I ain't surprised by that. The guy who was making all the fucking money. Hold on now, brother. Jesse, easy, brother. What do you think's going on?
All right, I'm going to give you my list next because I think we podcast a little too much together because I've got Hulk Hogan.
Sure.
Obviously, loved when we were younger. I mean, I think when he turned heel and went into the NWO, he wanted you to hate him.
Yeah.
And then when that sex tape and the racist comments came out, he really turned on him. And then it's been the dude is such a gimmick. It's almost hard to get back to where he was.
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost like that one girl that you keep going back to because you're like, oh, I got a soft spot for you, girl. Like, you know, he's our weak point because he was our first hero.
Dude, you know what's funny? And not to cut you off here, but I was just thinking about because you said gimmick. And I was just realizing, too, like, God, I mean, we're not going to do it here, but, like, polarizing people in general. I mean, just look at our president and our last president. Like, you talk about division, right? People are so passionate against either for or against Biden or for or against Trump. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, polarizing people, that's just, God damn.
It could be anybody because if you're like a well-rounded person, you almost have like this whole piece of your personality that some people are going to like, some people aren't going to like. It's,
I got an ex that I had to pay her to get rid of that house. Everybody else in my circle loves me. She don't love me. I'll tell you right now.
That's the lost interview we got to get. But next up, we got obviously Vince Russo. His writing, it's really argued to this day. Did he take WWF to the heights that it was at? Did he kill WCW to the lows that it was at? Were all the bad ideas his? Like, there's a lot that comes with Russo. Obviously, Vince McMahon is on this list because if you ask most people, he's the person that killed wrestling, killed territories, killed everything that made it what it was. To some, he is the birth of wrestling. He is, we talked about it the other week, he's the Coca-Cola, he's the Q-tip, he's the Kleenex, he's the name brand to that thing that we watch. And then
I'll go one step further too. What about the stories you hear about Vince hiding scandals? Jimmy Snuka, right? All that stuff on a personal level he's done. But then what about the other rare stories you hear too, where it's like, you know, Trevor Murdoch calls Vince, Harley Race is sick and he's dying, and they fly out his family to go see him like at the last minute, you know? So it's like you hear so many polarizing stories about Vince. So it's like, how does he not just
he gave these old timers jobs, kept them on probably. I mean, granted, it was an agreement. You make an agreement, you live up to it. But I mean, he kept a lot of guys on for a long time and has made sure people got paid. He's taking care. For all the people that he hasn't taken care of, there's just as many, I would argue, that he has.
Yeah, it's a complex individual. Go ahead.
Now, number 5 on my list, I doubt is going to pop up on anybody else's list, but Jim Barnett.
Interesting.
You know, getting back a little into wrestling history, he was a man, power broker for Georgia Wrestling, Crockett. He was in WWF. He has been the reason people have gotten jobs places. He's the reason people have not gotten jobs. He went to Australia when a sex scandal broke out in the US because of him. As many people that talk about him as good, we hear like Jim Ross talking about he liked the dirt. He liked to share things like that. And I mean, Tommy Rich's NWA title run, some would argue, he had to do a little extra work for that job. So
that's the story. That's rumor and innuendo, sir.
We'll see. And my honorable mention, because Dark Side of the Ring re-premiered last night.
Oh man, I thought we were gonna get this at some point, but go ahead.
And if you were not familiar with wrestling history, Ric Flair. I mean, liked him in the ring, hated him in the ring. We've liked him for years outside of the ring, and let's see if there's going to be some backlash. I'm going to argue one thing, though. People are going to act like we didn't know that he was helicoptering his dick years ago. Walking naked with the robe.
Let's have a quick sidebar here because this fucking conversation is going to get.
I mean, all right. You can't make somebody touch your dick. I think.
Yeah. So, all right. So, for anyone who didn't watch it, the story goes, and I think the story is legendary. Rick doing this countless of times. Yes. Rick would put on his robe, have no clothes, and then he'd go to a flight attendant
Yeah.
And he'd go, woo, and he'd whip the dick out, and Wick apparently well endowed. And supposedly everybody laughs and has a good fucking time, and they're hooting and hollering and wooing. And sometimes Flair even has slept with these women, supposedly. Now, that was not this fucking story. So this is the flight from hell, the plane ride from hell, they always call it, where so much shit went on this plane. This is a plane where Michael Hayes got his ponytail cut off. Brock Lesnar and Kurt Hennig supposedly almost went through the emergency door.
Yep.
Yeah. Now I will take umbrage with one thing, and it's not a bad thing. I think the lady said, these are big men. Could they have gone through the wall? Well, they can go through a wall in a house. Why not an airplane? I don't think airplanes are built that way. No disrespect. I
don't know if you're hitting that emergency exit. Who knows? Guy goes up against it. He's bracing as he hits back, falls, pulls something. They're not going to bust through it. Just pop, pop.
Right.
But I mean,
right.
Shit, somebody tripped near the emergency exit.
I thought she said that they wouldn't go through the emergency door. It would take a huge thing, but they could have maybe gone through the wall, which that's what I was like, I don't know about that. I would think these airplanes are built pretty fucking sturdy that two men are going to go. And that's the side point. We're rambling. ADD brain. Anyway, here's the thing. So Flair apparently does this gimmick to the flight attendant, and she was not happy. Now, of course, it doesn't end there. Supposedly, Flair goes up to her and is cornering her and asking her to touch it, and very uncomfortable. I got to tell you,
she described it as being in the galley where you get drinks, and if you think of your average plane, that little corner that they get drinks in,
right?
Maybe double the size of it given the plane. But that's still a small area to be having a dick forced on you, especially you got a back up against your wall.
Dude, no. And that's not even bad.
You'd almost have to touch the dick to run past it.
It doesn't even sound as bad as the Scott Hall story, too. The difference with Scott Hall was Scott was fucking drugged out of his fucking mind, where Scott apparently did grab this fucking woman, too, and said he was going to, lick her and some other things, but he just passed the fuck out.
I got to pause downstairs. I was just about to watch that part.
Oh, sorry. All right. Well, it's compelling.
Spoiler alert. No, I mean,
but my point is, Flair is obviously, after this episode, I'm going to say is going to even be more polarizing, because there's going to be a lot of people that aren't happy with him and some of the people who are on his plane. Tommy Dreamer did not come off well last night, and I've never had an issue with Tommy, but Tommy came very cold about the idea. Tommy basically said, that would never happen. I've never seen Rick do that. He would never do that. And of course, Rob Van Dam in the very next clip. Yeah, I remember when Rick was it sounded like it was fucking like Rick James recounting his, I was like, holy shit. Now there's another part at the end. I know, I don't want to fucking ruin it for you now.
Don't worry about ruining it.
But basically, they said it's not they settled a lawsuit out. She got money for it, and she talked about that she wasn't really, because there was another flight attendant who got money for it too, and she said she didn't even really want to talk about this, but she ended up she just, her husband and her wanted said take the money, but it was that's not what it was about. And of course, Tommy Dreamer calls her out on it and says, well, if she cared that much for truth and justice, maybe she should have took the payday. And I was just like, man, that's a callous fucking thing to say, Tommy, because you don't know what you would have done. You're not some smaller fucking person that somebody's cornering. Whatever.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah, also, you're on a plane. Your main thing is, serving drinks. You're not supposed to be an air marshal. Obviously, you have an authority that should be respected, but they deserve the money because, one, they got assaulted, and two, they just went over and above what was it. The situation went over and above what was expected. So how are they supposed to handle it?
So it shows you too, alcohol can be a hell of a thing, folks. These guys were on the fucking alcohol and drugs.
Alcohol's a hell of a drug.
Yeah. 7 hours. Go ahead. We got
Dave, you want to go on to our next list?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll give another list here. Jake St. John, the man who reason why we had this list. It's his idea.
With Diamonds, available on Amazon.
Hit it with it. All right, he's got Goldberg. Kind of exciting in the 90s, but it's 2021. Vince, Russo, and Bischoff. He has them tied for 4. Vince and Bischoff is tied for 4. Number 3 is Russo. Number 2, Hulk Hogan. I don't have to explain this, right? That's Jake. And number 1, Randy Orton. 1 second I love him, the next he's an asshole. It's brilliant.
And that's weird because I'd say earlier in Randy's career, he would be polarizing as a person. Mm-hmm. It seemed like he's worked his way into just being more polarizing as a character, which is good because, right. I mean, as we've seen, if you're polarizing as a person in wrestling, shit, at worst, you're raping and whipping your dick out. Worst stuff, like you're just making bad jokes.
Right. I mean, I'd better have you polarizing as a performer and a character and just think, man, this guy sucks, I'll change the channel, than to find out that you might be this monster behind the scenes. Now,
I know exactly like our podcast personas here. We don't really think these things. We just say them for giggles.
We don't know nothing. I got a speech impediment. All right. Anyway.
Now, my next list, Paul Stewart from the Mothership Facebook group. He's got Ole Anderson, Vince McMahon, Chris Benoit, Fritz Von Erich, and Jim Cornette.
That's a good one. I like that Fritz inclusion. Fritz. It's funny. Okay, here's the bad thing about this, all right? When we're talking about the negative part of this.
He's the one Nazi that we wanted to like, except when he fed his own kids to the wrestling business.
Not even that, man. What about that heart attack angle he came up with, too? I'm going to pretend I'm dying.
Dude, that's like 5th on the list. There's real deaths that were like worse than that. I actually read something on Facebook the other day from one of the Von Erich kids. It wasn't Ross or Marshall.
Oh, Lance?
But no, not Lance. But they were talking about the day that their Uncle Chris died, that he had like called their dad. And, you know, they were talking and this kid was on the phone with his uncle and said something. And his uncle was just like, I love you. Just, you know, tell him to get a hold of me. And then later that afternoon is when they found the sleeping bag off on the ranch. And God, you really don't think about how polarizing Fritz Von Erich is until you get into that. Not a lot of us know his glory time or when he was big. We're just familiar with the dirt and everything after.
The dirt. Shout out to that Jim Barnett on your list too, by the way.
We got another deep cut on here, which almost inspired my Jim Barnett cut. But give us your next list.
All right, I got from the Mothership as well, Derek Austin, who currently would say CM Punk, not even close. An all-time, I think he has here, looks like Piper and Flair and Funk. And that's all we had on the list. Now, again, I don't know, assuming, I think there's a misunderstanding in polarizing because, like, okay, you can make an argument CM Punk's on that list, I guess, but I don't think so. And especially if you're talking about currently, I think he's one of the most popular guys of all time, which I think that some people might have thought this meant.
I'm wondering if the polarizing comes because some people are mad that he wouldn't return to WWE, but will return to AEW. So
that's
it's
fair.
Almost like, oh, you fucking with them? You dead to me now.
That's fair. There's a lot of that nowadays, too, where it's like you got to be on one side or the other, right?
I just don't want to think that our fans don't understand what polarizing means.
Yeah, I know. I can barely talk, and I understand it. Anyway.
Yeah, if Dave's got it, he can even use it in a sentence.
They just got Hashimoto's disease, and he gets it.
That's why he's going to the island for those Andy Kaufman treatments.
Easter eggs in there. Easter eggs. If AJ actually listens, we got tons of Easter eggs in here. Anyway.
I know. I feel like we'll know the day he listens when he gets mad. Like,
come back. What the fuck?
Down the road.
You motherfucker. Rent money's due.
Now, Dave, we have a returning favorite, friend of the show, Dave Fabe. He's got Nick Gage, Orange Cassidy, Joey Janela, Vince Russo, Vince McMahon, and then Jake Rule's in effect. He's got Jack Pfeffer. Now, for anybody that doesn't know Jack Pfeffer, he is one of those old-time promoters. If you go early 1930s, like around the Gold Dust Trio time.
Okay.
The reason I would say he's popular is because he did so much to project the business and get us to where we're at. But he is also known for the ripoff names. Like, let's say Buddy Rogers was a popular wrestler of the day. He would have Bummy Rogers. So you would almost look and be like, oh man, Buddy Rogers is on this show.
Mm.
You know, and then he'd get you to buy a ticket, almost carny you in the door by like a misappropriation of names. So I thought that was an interesting pick.
That is an interesting pick. So Nick Gage too. Yeah, that's interesting too because Nick Gage represents deathmatch wrestling, which is polarizing in itself, I guess.
Yeah, same with Joey Janela. I would say they're kind of both in that GCW area where Joey Janela took GCW to a point and then went on to AEW to kind of be that big time indie guy, where Nick Gage, king of the deathmatch, king of the indies, and just keeps taking GCW higher and higher, getting them more notoriety.
Sidebar: who's the bigger star right now, Joey Janela or Nick Gage? No, Nick Gage is the hotter commodity. I don't know if his paycheck says it, but I feel he's got more buzz.
It's got to be Nick Gage because Joey Janela is not getting that TV time. If he were on TV every week on TNT,
sure,
I would say so. But even if he's big on Dark and Dark Elevation, that's just about that GCW level.
Sure.
Because like AEW, they put a lot into these extra shows, but it's not getting the most buzz.
Right. I got also from the mothership here, speaking of buzz, Andrew Armstrong. He's got Vince McMahon, Vince Russo, Hulk Hogan. Let's see, he only got 4. And one more. And I actually thought about this one, the Fabulous Moolah. Now, the reason why I didn't end up putting Moolah on my list was because I didn't think Moolah was that popular. I didn't think, you know what I mean? Like, she was obviously hated, but she was a villain for most of her career. And then, obviously, the stuff that came out later on that we found out possibly. Now, I'm going to say possibly with this one because there's so many, like, reports that go back and forth on this one. But pimping out women and stuff like that. And, yeah, but Moolah, I say Moolah does fit. So,
I read a great book called Sisterhood of the Squared Circle, and it's a fine line with Moolah because she took women's wrestling from being like a sideshow attraction where it was equated with midget wrestling at the time, where they would have a match featured on the show and that's it. And guys like Lou Thez at the time were reported not to want to work shows where women were featured. Moolah got girls to the WWF. She got them. They went other places. The flip side of that is she kept a stranglehold on her commodity. And whether or not she pimped out women, it's not like it wasn't happening with other promoters. Not that doesn't make it okay at all. But it's almost like she was trying to take it back for herself, and I'm sure she felt vindicated in that.
What's interesting about Moolah's case, and why I'm always a little skeptical, is because there were a good amount of people that came forward about Moolah, but also there were people who stuck up for Moolah. But the thing was, the people who stuck up for Moolah were some people who actually hated Moolah. They actually said they actually were downgrading Moolah. And if you look at Dark Side, I can't remember the wrestler who it was, but there was one who very was clear did not like Moolah, but said, no, I don't recall anything like that ever happened.
Yeah, I believe. Oh man, I wish I could remember now. I believe he had the Native American gimmick. Princess something.
So when you hear that kind of contradiction, I'm still not saying it happened because some of these poor people, they sound, so I guess maybe I'd be curious. I bet you there's more to this story that we're never going to know, and this is just spitballing. Who knows? Maybe she was involved in this, but maybe there's elements that some people don't know, and maybe there's other people involved.
Well, think about it too. She was a woman that got to a level of popularity in a time where not a lot of women did.
Right.
And when driven women, they have that personality that's going to get you places, but it's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way. So polarizing, exactly.
Bitch.
Exactly. Now we got shit. I'm going to give it to a man of God right now because Tyler Peters list on us.
Praise Jesus.
Thank God. When I asked him, he goes, I'm going to need a minute. And he took, I would say, a good half hour to think about it and then got me a list. And I'll be damned if he didn't deliver. Obviously, Vince McMahon is on that list. Eric Bischoff, Now, anybody that knows Tyler Peters knows that he's a Jim Cornette guy.
Yeah.
Cornette's third on his list. Then you got the northern version of Cornette. Paul Heyman is on.
Heyman. Yeah.
And then Don Callis, a man who I would say, if you look at what he's done with Impact and his Killing the Town podcast that he had with Lance Storm, he got over huge with those two shows. His on-screen persona, any of his on-screen personas, people have hated over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a man who I would say divides people right down the middle.
I'll disagree a little bit. I'll tell you why. I think Don Callis is more of just a straight-up heel. I think there's some good stuff he's done, but I don't know if he gets the complete credit he deserves for that. However, he's polarizing in the sense of a character because he's just a pure heel. He's really good at it, and he's really good at getting people to dislike him.
We're also in an age now where the heels are cheered, so when you're that good a heel like MJF, you get that weird reaction where
I see them.
Yeah, cheers.
I will say, who else is a great just heel? I don't know if he'd be considered polarizing, but I think I put him with Don Callis. Oh God, why am I breaking out his name? American Top Team.
Dan Lambert.
Dan Lambert, thank you. I want to call him Jim Lambert. Yeah, Dan Lambert. He's been fucking just, I think, great as a pure heel. So I don't know.
Yeah, he's highly entertaining. I saw him do that deal in Impact. I loved it the first time he did it. He's done it in MLW. He is a great character.
You could argue he's polarizing though, because he's a very respected man in like mixed martial arts and stuff, and his team is very well respected. So I mean, it's there, but he knows how to play heel. Yeah,
and if you look at what he's doing, he's base at the very base level. He's just doing Cornette, and it's working. Being the most polarizing man,
but he believes it. Like he is that old school guy.
Oh
like,
yeah.
He used to pay for like dinners and sponsor guys like Stan Hansen and stuff like that. He was one of those guys that would sponsor me. He has money, and he would take his friends out, and they would go on dinners to meet like wrestling legends just to have a good time and hear the stories. So,
he's got a belt collection and everything.
Oh yeah,
you can tell in his promo game that he is a real fan of the sport.
100%.
Now I'm gonna drop another list on you real quick because we got Jason Shane. You'll know him as the rapper Strife Bringing Chaos. And he's got Britt Baker, Kenny Omega, CM Punk, Bryan Danielson,
interesting,
Riddle, okay, and then as an honorable mention, the Lucha Brothers and Jungle Boy.
All right, get fucked.
Britt Baker, maybe a year ago, polarizing. Kenny Omega.
She's a popular here. I can popular heel. Omega, you could make an argument for. Because again, there's that WWE audience that probably doesn't.
I don't see it with CM Punk.
Old school. Not much. Maybe you could argue Punk before recently. I think there was some people that were pissed off. Remember back in the day, Agnew was pissed off at Punk when he went to do that Fox gig for WWE because it was a Fox job. But because he talked about that recently too, that he was not hired at all by WWE. It was actually appointed him to actually make sure when he talked to Fox, and Fox is like, no, we want to be very transparent here. We need someone who's going to be critical. Of course, the job didn't last. But there was somebody on this list.
Danielson, I don't see. Riddle.
No.
Lucha Brothers, I think the only argument you could make is the Lucha tag style where the tags aren't always on point, but I'm really reaching to find it. And Jungle Boy, what? You just hate 90210, and you're not gonna let his dad you're not gonna let him outlive this one.
Fuck this. All right, next. I got someone else from the mothership. I believe I got this from you. It looks like James Castillo. I'm going with that. He's got Brock Lesnar, which I can see. CM Punk. Maybe we're just gonna have to accept he's polarizing. Lex Luger, because the rest of this list makes sense. Roman Reigns. And Hulk Hogan. I'll comment on Roman a little bit because
I'm surprised Lex didn't get it more.
Yeah, Lex can definitely. I'm not. Yeah, I agree with that.
Miss Elizabeth dies in your house and you're not going to outlive it. I don't care if you can't stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up straight with your chest.
Polarized. Roman Reigns, though, from terms of a character standpoint. Here's a guy that was.
Are you going to hate a cancer survivor?
They do. They hated him. Now he's a bad guy, and he's a lot more well loved and respected. But I think he still has some heat from the babyface days a little bit. And but he's I would say, I don't know. It's interesting, right? It's almost he's getting the same. This is an interesting part of wrestling. All right, Polarizing. John Cena for many years, same thing. They come out as a babyface and they boo the shit out of him sometimes. The kids love him. Women would love him. Fucking those 18 to 39-year-old men. Fuck you, Cena. Fuck you. And now Roman, same thing. You know, even when he had cancer, they were forgiven for a little while, but he came back. They're like, fuck this guy. Now he's getting booed by like the kid stuff and maybe some of that, but there's also a certain male audience that like love Roman. They love it when he talks shit.
He's the Samoan badass. I think what's really coming through is the genuineness of his promos. He's not being scripted. Mm-hmm. You're hearing what's on his mind.
But what I wanted to say was, just like Cena, regardless whether they were heel or babyface, people were reacting passionately. The buildings were always loud. Love you or hate you, those two both had star fucking qualities that made them polarizing.
100%. Now, Christopher Nyron, I got this from the Wrestle Roast Facebook group. And I didn't realize I knew something was up with the list as I was reading through it. And then I was like, why the fuck did I put this in a comedy group? We got Glacier, Ice Queen, Al Snow, The Yeti, Polar Bear.
Polarizing.
I gave it a laughing face emoji. I mean, dude did his thing, but fuck, man. I just had to include that because when we were talking about people maybe not understanding Polarizing, I'm like, but this dude just didn't understand shit.
I got one from Twitter I want to throw out real quick. The $1 Million, I believe it's Elsman. He actually asked me in terms of what overall, so I explained him. And then he said, okay. I definitely have to throw Jim Cornette on there, Ric Flair, and he said most people are not divided, but he's very polarizing, he thinks, although that was before last night's episode.
We'll see what the blowback is, because, I mean, I think with Ric Flair...
He gets passed a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's years ago. I mean, not that it's okay, but it is Flair, and it's like... I don't know. I can't see it taking him down, but I also... Shit, maybe at this point he doesn't get that AEW contract. That may be the only thing that this cost him, honestly.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I'm sorry, I'm just looking. He had one more on that list too. He had Shawn Michaels, who didn't make a lot of people's list.
You think Joey Ryan could sue him for the dick flip gimmick?
No.
Oh no, could he sue Joey Ryan actually? Because he started it earlier.
I was gonna say Rick is got the shoot dick flick. That's the only difference. I just realized too as we're going through this. Is it your turn for a list?
Yeah, I'll drop one on you.
Well, because we actually had somebody in the Working Fans Podcast Facebook page. I'm not sure if you saw it.
Ooh, no, I didn't.
Okay, I'm gonna get that.
Let's give them some shine.
Yeah. So while you're doing that, let me just pull this up because I did see this here.
All right, I'll drop a quick list on you. We got Adam Singer. He's got John Cena, Brock Lesnar, CM Punk, Hulk Hogan, and Vince McMahon. Vince is one I definitely expected to see on more lists, but if you want to get an accurate view of how the territories died, there's a great book out there called Death of the Territories, where the death of the territories, a part of it is Vince and what he did, undercutting other people's TV deals, but it was also the rise of cable TV. The more TV branched out there, it was able to get to other territories, and like, for instance, people in the South could catch WWF TV. Now, buying the Georgia shares and trying to force his TV down there didn't help. Stealing a lot of Vern's top talent, that didn't help, especially when you take the top off that AWA and it's just vanilla underneath.
Georgia Championship Russell was pretty quick to make that sale, too. They were take that money.
God bless the Briscoe brothers, though.
God bless them, man. They got themselves some jobs, too. Now, Jay Osorio, I believe that's how you say his name, from the Working Fans Facebook page, commented, Hogan, Rock, Austin, Cena, Vince. Some people I would say yes. Some people I would wonder if we get. But I guess The Rock is the one that's showing me. I don't consider The Rock very polarizing. Like, I consider The Rock very popular. Like, people love The Rock. Yeah, I don't know, man.
Maybe if you want to factor in when he first started,
You want to get the heel run he had, yeah.
The WWF trying to force him down our throats, maybe. But yeah, that's a tougher one. And
okay. I got another list here. Hold on. I've stopped in my tracks. I have to read this because friend of the show, Michael Caldwell. Let's see this. And I think maybe I didn't explain it. But again, here's what I'm going to say. Okay, some of these could make sense. Hogan. This is what I think some people thought popular. Hogan, Rock, Andre, Flair. Ricky Steamboat. No.
I don't think anybody hates Ricky Steamboat. But
no, that's what I'm saying. I think that some people must have thought this is like popularity or something because no, Ricky Steamboat, absolutely not. He's not polarizing.
I mean, maybe we'd have to talk to AJ about that because he's such a fan of the heels. Maybe he hated Ricky, but I can't see it. That's like somebody hating Bobby Eaton or something. Like, it just doesn't feel right.
Anyway, pineapple head. That's all I'm thinking about. The old school managers would call him a pineapple head.
Now, my next list, Adam Singer. He's got John Cena, Brock Lesnar. Oh, wait, I already read that.
You just read that. I was not here, this motherfucker already.
Motherfucker, I didn't check it off. I fucked up. Tyler Schieffer got us a list this week. Sheep from the Burnt Basement.
Yeah, former podcast.
You know who our man is.
Shout out.
He's got
You're on that Tim Storm interview. Go ahead, baby.
He's got Hulk Hogan.
Yep.
John Cena, CM Punk, Paul Heyman.
Okay.
And goddamn, like this was before Dark Side of the Ring, but Ric Flair maybe for the last. And like I'd say, up until Thursday, I would say it's strictly for the in-ring character. And shit, I mean, if you want to talk about him fucking around on his wife, leaving his kids, all that shit, yeah, maybe you could put him on that list. But helicoptering your dick and making somebody touch it, that's not the way to go, is it, Dave?
No, it's not. It's not a good move. You don't want to do that at your job or your family functions here. Now, I got Michael Flynn, who's got Ric Flair, Sonny, The Rock, Jim Cornette, and superstar Billy Graham, who is, I would say, is very polarizing. One of the most popular heels of all time back in the day. Trendsetter in the business. People like Hulk Hogan and Jesse Ventura, a lot would argue, ripped off Billy Graham. That being said, Billy also is a polarizing guy who said some nasty things against Vince and WWE, but also this in the last few years, he had some negative comments about people like Kofi Kingston and people, some racist comments, I would say, too. So, Billy make that list.
Yeah. Now, next up, friend of the show, co-host of regularly scheduled hostilities. If you're living in the Ohio area, he might be dropping off some FedExes to your place. May be riding solo. Josh DeBoard. His list is off the top of his head. Steve Austin. The Rock.
Sorry.
John Cena. Undertaker. And Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, again, I'm not. Some of those guys, maybe.
Yeah, this is another one where it's. Does he actually see. Steve Austin, I guess I could see that being polarizing. But The Undertaker. God, he hasn't really been polarizing since like the 90s.
That one Joe Rogan comment, maybe, but
yeah,
I don't know. Dan Backley, he's got Rock, Austin, Hogan, Andre, and Flair. Dan Backley, who's part of the Cage My IQ. He's got his podcast.
Cage My IQ on Twitter.
That's right. Oh, look at you.
I was waiting to see. I'm like, how you gonna fuck up his show? But you were on it not too long ago.
I know. Shout out to back.
You're like, I just come in his town. I don't know who the fuck you is.
But again, I don't know. I some of these people I could have got back to probably a little bit better, but I don't know about Andre. I always thought Andre was so universally loved.
I guess you could hate him if you're watching wrestling for like a match, and then Andre comes out, and it's just like,
yeah.
I think who's that Indian dude? Giant, Great Khali.
Oh, Great Khali.
Kind of like him. Like, maybe some people love him, but some people are like, oh, look at this big motherfucker that's gonna.
He did. supposedly
Like,
take care of his daughter. There's that too. And then there's
oh,
also
who, Andre?
yeah, he's got a daughter out there.
Yeah,
That was,
fuck him.
yeah, fuck you, Andre. And then
God
there
bless.
was, of course, there was apparently some racist things. He said the bad news too, and there was also some.
At least he had the balls to say it to his face.
He did. I think he backed off now.
Oh yeah, when bad news
Bad
wants to
news.
go outside and fight you.
Yeah, probably not a good idea.
I guess the N-word's all good and fun until somebody wants to fight you over it. Then it's like, all right, I'll stop saying it. Jesus.
Yeah. Probably Andre, you're used to this fucking people backing down. But
Oh yeah, the man's a giant.
Yeah, but bad news Allen is a whole fucking other ball game there.
Now,
Anyway.
Dave, we got one of your countrymen, Jesus Salas Rodriguez from the Mothership Facebook group.
My man.
Not in any particular order. New Jack, Jim Cornette,
all right,
Hulk Hogan,
damn,
Shawn Michaels.
Oh yeah,
and believe it or not, Jose Gonzalez. I don't know who Jose Gonzalez is.
That you know who that is. That's Invader 1, man. That's the guy who fucking stabbed Brody in the back there. I would argue that's just a straight fucking heel, but I like the rest of his list, and I think he gets it. So I'm not gonna fucking totally. But although he was very popular in Puerto Rico, so yeah. Hey, whatever. You know what? People had strong motherfucking opinions about that guy.
Yeah, I mean, some would argue that, you know, he was defending his territory from Brody. I mean, I think most would just call it a straight up assault. Murder.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that Brody was. I don't think the guy was fucking defending himself, considering Brody got stabbed. And whatever. I don't even want to.
God, I hope at this point AJ makes it back from the islands. There's gonna be like a little wire down there. They're gonna be like, "Yo, you see that white boy? Take him down. His boys are talking some shit."
AJ, take the payday.
Dave's got diplomatic immunity, so he's staying alive. I'm worried for myself out on these streets.
I got my main man next. Randy Osga.
Reg.
Randy Osga, what a hell of a claim. A hell of a list. He's got Vince McMahon, Jim Cornette, Hulk Hogan, Vince Russo. And I'm going to give Randy some credit for this one, especially with social media and nowadays, Disco Inferno.
Ooh, yeah. Like,
it's a deep cut because
that's a real good one. Yeah.
Yeah. So Disco.
I don't even know what to say. That's got me silent for a minute.
Yeah. Shout
Lost
out to Randy.
word.
Put that
but
out.
I'm not at a loss for lists because I got Elliot DeLapp up next. He's got John Cena, Seth Rollins, the Young Bucks, and Hulk Hogan.
Kind of surprised the Bucks didn't make more a list.
Yeah, I think a lot more people are into that AEW thing right now, and they view them more good than bad, even though their heel characters are fucking atrocious.
Well, I mean, Pat Oates was saying he didn't like to watch AEW because the Bucks were spot monkeys and stuff like that, and that was one of his things. And Josh Borda said the same thing, and I think sometimes AEW doesn't get a fair look because people think it's all just young bucks flying around, which is obviously, if you watch AEW, it's like a buffet, like Eric Bischoff always preaches. There's many different things going on the show, and there's storytelling, there's brawls, and there's also some matches with some high spots. I would argue the Bucks are more than just high spots too, but that's just my personal opinion. But I'm saying I think the Bucks are so polarizing by some people, it just leads to that unfair assumption. Now, Joseph, how many more lists do you have, sir?
I was just about to ask you the same thing. I got one more.
Oh, same here then. All right, let me wrap it up.
Oh, look at that. We're so good at this shit. We're done at the same time. Like what?
Yeah. If this was a relationship, we'd both be walking away satisfied, if you know what I'm saying. Now, I got Scott
we fuck their
Voluntown.
ear holes. I think the listeners are going to walk away most satisfied.
Scott from Voluntown, our man. He's got Jim Cornette, Chris Benoit, Vince McMahon, Eric Bischoff, Vince Russo, and then me and him had to talk about this. And I was asking
you had a come to Jesus moment.
We talked about non-wrestling personalities being included, and he said, or wrestling, adjacent personalities, and he came up with this guy who said that if we're including people that aren't quite in the wrestling business, what about this guy, Dave Meltzer? Damn, Scott, you broke the list, baby. How nobody else got Dave Meltzer?
We're going to go right into Brian Caudill's list because he has Jim Cornette,
He caught ill.
Dave Meltzer, John Cena,
Ah!
Hulk Hogan, and Vince in no particular order. And that's
Right.
weird that Meltzer hadn't made his chance to on these lists till now.
Until the last two. So let's talk about Meltzer a little bit before we get to this final list. Meltzer, people love Dave too, because Dave is that guy that when before there was the internet, he was the closest thing you had to inside source, and he's talking to people. And at the heart of the matter too, and we're gonna get to why people hate Dave, but he is a fan. He's clearly a fan who watches a shit ton of fucking wrestling.
A fan and a reporter.
Yeah. Now that being said, Dave's reporting always factual. Has he made mistakes? Has he said some questionable things? Yeah, and all that. But I will say this.
Plus, he's a reporter in a business that almost akin to the mafia. They don't like their business getting out there. The whole thing's supposed to be a work, and he's peeking behind that curtain, giving you those behind the scenes. And there is a huge faction of people that don't like it.
My personal opinion is Dave's opinion doesn't really matter. I find them kind of interesting sometimes. Like I'll listen. Like if a YouTube video pops up from Wrestling Observer, I'll what's it about? Okay, I'll check this out. And I take everything he says with a grain of salt. And some of the stuff's interesting. I like hearing some of the reviews on some things. If it was a good show, I'm like, okay, what do I have to say? But I don't fucking lose any sleep over what Dave thinks one way or the other.
Plus, everyone, we're fucking adults. If you're out there getting your news, and this is going to be a little sidebar. We're going to get a little political for a moment, but wherever you're getting your information, consider the source. Maybe look at a couple sources, see what's similar, what's not. Every once in a while, you'll get a bad reporter that injects a little more opinion into it. And I mean, no matter what you think about Dave, whether he's a good source or a bad source, is a source, and he's been in the game for a few years. So he's not always going to be perfect, but to say that he doesn't have a place in wrestling, I would say is slightly less than factual.
Agreed. Now, we got to figure out top three. We've been going on for almost an hour. I think this is our longest 5-3-1 ever.
I saw that we did have that plane ride from hell discussion, but we also had arguably the most list we've had.
I know.
And when you consider it, even if these motherfuckers don't know what polarizing is, I think they do, because look how many people put in lists, we're debating it. And even the people that we didn't think were polarizing, I think we found something for everybody, I believe.
Contributing on our list. Ricky Steamboat was only one of them questions, though, but for the most part, I'm on board with all these guys.
Yeah, we'll get his ex-wife on here. She'll give us the dirt.
Then again, that's a damn good point. Bonnie Steamboat, where you at? All right.
Now,
top 5 list, people. Yeah, I guess Vince was on enough lists. I would say Hogan was on a lot of lists.
Hogan, Cornette.
God, yeah, Cornette, Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff.
CM Punk. Against
CM Punk, surprisingly, man. I'm not putting him in the final 3, but I could definitely.
I'm going to say McMahon, Russo, Hogan.
Man, Russo, Hogan. All right. I mean, you could argue Cornette's in there too, but I'm going to say, all right. Let's go with that. No,
Cornette instead of Russo.
All right. So Russo, McMahon. I'm sorry. Cornette, McMahon, Hogan.
Oh, yep. Cornette, McMahon,
Hogan. For me. All right.
I would say Cornette gets bounced first because of these 3, he's easily the most likable. Only because he genuinely owns it. Whether or not you agree with him, that is that dude. And I think that's what it is with CM Punk too. He has a multifaceted personality, and he doesn't give a fuck which side you get that day.
Well, I will argue this point. If we just took a national poll, not us, but let's say Sports Illustrated.
We took as national a poll as we could, and we got 20.
All right, I'll tell you what. Let's poll it with our audience. It's our audience that we're speaking of.
Our audience is getting the poll.
Give him the poll. I'm going to say, then you're right. I'm going to say Jim Cornette gets the bye. Or he's getting booted, I guess, but it's kind of the bye in this category, maybe.
Yeah.
But then again, you got to look at it too. It's not necessarily it's most hated. It's just most divided.
I think Hogan really put himself over the top with those
I think
racist
so. Dude. I
comments.
think it's Hogan. I think that's the winner because I think Hogan was so fucking beloved as a
You
legend,
would
and
say
then
Hogan over Vince.
I think Hogan was so beloved by people, but then I think Hogan fucking did the fucking thing with the sex tape and the racist comments. He got so hated. Whereas I think Vince is still, he's there. I don't know. I gave slight nod to Hogan, I think.
All right. Well, much like Randy Savage said,
You
"Be
know
a
what? We're
man,
polarizing on
Hogan."
this.
Yeah, I mean,
Cream of the crop.
you know what the music means. Be a man, Hogan. And guys, we will talk to you again next week.
You were my perfect friend.